Hello and welcome to Risk at Work, Riskonnect's educational web series. I'm Scott Fenstermaker. I'm the Vice President of Digital Marketing. Today we're talking about mastering third-party risk, a deep dive into TPRM best practices. TPRM is something that we talk about far too seldom here on Risk at Work for the amount of risk that it actually poses to the organization. And it's one of those areas that needs to have a lot of attention paid to it. It can very easily fall into a matter of what we might call the questionnaire mentality, the idea of a due diligence process that happens by rote over and over and over again. You send out your questions, you get hundreds of answers. They might go into a spreadsheet or a database somewhere, never to be seen again. But the ever-increasing digitization of risk, it comes as no surprise, has had an outsized impact on third-party and nth-party risk. And so it pays every once in a while to make sure that we are in the midst of best practices, to make sure that we are watching for common pitfalls and making sure that we are doing everything that we can to make these third-party processes easiest for everybody involved, but effective for the organization. And we have a wonderful guest to talk about this today, but first, a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, if you have questions for our guest today, please put your question into the questions field of your webinar software. If we don't address the question during the course of the presentation, we will respond to you directly with an email with an answer from our guest today. Also, if you indicated that you are looking to receive CPE credit for attending this webinar, please watch your inbox after we're done today. You'll receive an email with 3 short questions. You fill that out, you return it to us, and we will respond to you with your CPE credit. All right, I'm thrilled to introduce back to Risk at Work a friend of the web series. You know her, you love her. She is an internationally recognized speaker, writer, educator, advisor, an all-around overachiever. She's just off of speaking at the Riskonnect annual user conference, where she did a wonderful job. We love to have her. Her textbook, Operational Risk Management Best Practices in the Financial Services Industry, was named Book of the Year in 2020. And you know her from previous episodes of Risk at Work. She is an incredibly intelligent individual, and we're lucky to have her take on TPRM. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ariane Chapelle. Ariane, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Scott. Thank you for the generous introduction.
We want you to feel the love here at Risk at Work. We want you to feel comfortable and keep coming back because your takes are just wonderful to have, and you keep giving us such wonderful information.
Well, the bar is high now, no pressure at all. I guess this is my cue to no, of course. This is my cue to start. So
yes, please. Let's take it away. Let's hear about mastering, not just participating in, but mastering third-party risk. No pressure. Please let us know what you've brought for us.
Okay, very good. Well, an agenda in 3 points, as always. You like, I like presentations that comes in 3 sections. And so we can have, as always, discussions, themes per theme. So I'd like to start with a general framework and putting things in order. So I'd like to take you through the TPRM life cycle. I have experience, hopefully, in TPRM from clients, but also sat a certification on third-party risk management professional. And so there are interesting resources from shared assessment. So there are some links and resources I would present to you, to the people listening, that might be of value. And then next, talking about practicalities, I'd like to take you through the common traps and pitfalls that you might come across, or some challenge that you can share from those of us listening and the practice. And then finally have some discussion on the role of risk appetite, and do we have enough risk appetite decisions when it comes to third-party risk management, or is it just a given? So on the first part, the different steps of a third-party risk management framework of life cycle. And I'm going to take you through all of these. But first of all is a business model decision. What are we okay to outsource, and what do we don't want to outsource, and for which reasons, and what sort of risk does that raise? Once this decision is taken, the core of the risk assessment really is the evaluation of vendors, the risk rating of vendors, in order to have a proportionate approach to the risk management generated by your third parties, your suppliers. When I say suppliers, by the way, I mean third-party suppliers, outsourcers. I'm going to use all these names interchangeably. Another element that is in my view, but I'll have a chance to go back to that, is the contract and contract designs and the incentive structures and the revisions. So all the elements of contract management with vendors, and then monitoring, and finally terminations and the consequence of termination. This is a summary approach, because also after these steps, I want to talk about concrete examples. However, all the points of attention here are also driven from my experience of discussions I don't always find present enough, I would say, in firms, or as an afterthought. So, and the first decision is, what is the sort of business model we want? And as part of our business model, what are the things we do in-house versus the things that we delegate? So typically, you're going to have a lot of firms choosing to keep insourcing your core activity and outsource everything that they're not necessarily best at, or in other words, of other specialists are better. So that would be outsourcing your IT to the cloud. And I'll have other examples when we talk about concrete examples soon enough. Call center, customer service, classic examples are your call center outsourced, either to cheaper than you are or to more expensive that you could do. I'll go back to that again. But of course, when you outsource your call center, you also outsource your customer interface. So that also comes with very specific risk of customer image. Not everybody would agree with that. Maybe for smaller firms, you could, and not in the financial sector, quite obviously, but in the non-financial sector, outsource some international treasuries, finance functions, or accounting function more for micro firms. And in general, any sort of technical job for which a company doesn't have necessarily the expertise, you can have suppliers for that. And that also includes consultants. But by suppliers and third parties, I mean more, and I think that's the general acceptation of the market, more essential suppliers, I would say, suppliers of service rather than contracting labor. So the notion of outsourcing your non-core activity is, of course, to exploit as much as possible what you're best at, and not to dilute your effort in your non-core business. The other element that is not straightforward to everybody is, why do you outsource? Besides the exploitation of your competitive advantage, do you outsource to save costs, or do you outsource to gain quality? And these are entirely different decisions and consequences in terms of risk. If you outsource to save cost, so to cheaper than what you could organize yourself, for companies that do not necessarily are cheaper for economies of scale, but are cheaper because they're elsewhere. And that's a classic example of call center in Bangalore that are now actually, there were so many call centers in Bangalore that now India has become almost as expensive as a lot of countries where they were delegated the services. So it's moving to Nigeria, etc., and it's moving gradually to places that are cheaper in terms of labor cost, which is great in terms of savings, but they usually companies that are geographically distant, sometimes also in terms of business practice being distant, and so you lose a number of level of control, sometimes a level of quality. And so basically you acquire risk. Okay, you trade, you buy safety, or you acquire risk at a lower cost. If you outsource for quality, then you outsource for potentially bigger and more expensive than you are, and you decrease your risks, but then so you buy safety, you pay money, and you increase stability. Examples are, recent example I have in the UK would be small leasing companies outsourcing their payment system to HSBC. It's not necessarily the cheapest option, but it's far more secure because the infrastructure and infrastructure security of HSBC is much better than what these local leasing companies could afford. So that's an important part of decision when you outsource, is not necessarily to reduce cost. Okay, so that's one element. Then once you've decided what to outsource, is the question of who do you outsource to, and what are the risks involved when these outsourcing? And so obviously this is a joint also decisions with risk appetite. A classic approach, and I'm sure everybody listening, or the large majority of the firms listening, have some risk tiering of vendors from the highest critical risk to the lowest risk. And that will depend on a number of factors. Is the suppliers regulated or not, and in which regulatory environment, both geographically and in terms of industry? Of course, the more regulated, the easier it is to have external assurance on the risk level of the vendor. Obviously, the nature of the service being outsourced, is it critical for you, or is it more secondary? Very relevant, and more relevant as years go by, the types of data that the vendor has access to, and similarly the types of systems that the vendors have access to. And then in fifth, which is personally, but that's more my pet topic on that, is the availability requirement on the service, or in other words, the risk of disruption if your vendor, the capacity of your vendor to cause or not a significant disruption in your organizations. And so all these elements, and possibly more, would be some of the major criteria that will drive the level of risk rating, and therefore the proportionality of risk management that you're going to apply to the monitoring, and essentially the monitoring, but also the requirement of these third party. You see in a tiny font here on the slides, the source, the professional certification for third-party risk management professionals, CTPRP, that's a mouthful, provided by by Shared Assessment. Look them up. I think it's concise, easily accessible, and quite informative. And they have other resources I'll get to in a minute. And so these ratings will give you your inherent risk rating, and so it's up to you later on to tier the vendors, and then to adjust the risk management of these third parties accordingly. So this is a very simple ways and table to risk rate the vendor from low to mission critical, looking at what is are the vendors at play with critical processes. This is regulated surely in the US, but in the EBA, at least for the financial industry, the European Banking Authority have edicted a few years ago the outsourcing directive, saying that all the vendors, all the outsourcers, the suppliers that are critical or important and touching a critical process of a financial services company needs to respond to a certain of risk evaluation criteria, monitoring, and mitigation of the risk. So this is something that the regulator in the financial industry takes very, very seriously. And the other data access and the system access, these are quite correlated in terms of criteria. If you touch a critical process of the system, chances are that also touch or have access to confidential and sensitive data, and similarly with the system access. Whether the sector is regulated or not will increase, of course, the risk if it's not regulated. And then that's very much the rating of shared assessment. And I've added my own column, and I told you it was my pet topic, is the substitutability of the vendor. So are you dependent on one vendor? Are you completely tied in? Does it have monopoly power over you? Or do you have diversified sources? And in these times of supply chains and disruptions, diversification of supply chain as much as possible, it's not always possible, is particularly important. So having a plan B for your vendors as many times as possible, as much as possible, is advisable. In terms of due diligence, of course, there's the classic due diligence from a financial perspective, robustness and soundness. You don't want your vendor to go bankrupt or to disappear. And that's also relevant in the high-tech environment. We're talking a lot, oh gosh, if you're not sick yet to talk about AI and Gen AI and tech firms, there's a lot of small innovative firms, but they're not always, you know, the Google and the Amazons of this world in terms of financial stability. And so you might want to look at the sustainability of the firms, that is your suppliers, and the sustainability of the technology and the know-how. But I'm sure we'll have a chance to discuss that. So on the financial stability, it's one. Operational, very important. Also in practice, not always looked at. The due diligence, it depends. I mean, it really depends. But my point is, you don't want to limit your due diligence only to the cold and the hard part of the contract, the structure of the contract, the legal, the tax environment, and the financial environment. You also want to understand how your vendor operates. Is he responsive? Do you like people who are quickly responsive or not? Or what about timeliness? What about type of working? What about culture of working? We're going to talk about partnerships and close relationship with vendors. As much as possible, if you get along with your vendors, it really helps the relationship. So try to also include, side comment here when we talk about due diligence, but try to also include in your due diligence the character aspect, the qualitative aspect of a relationship that you might build between these vendors. And same thing with the vendor and their clients for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, and sometimes more. All right, so there's more aspects to due diligence than the vetting search. One element that is not mentioned here, sort of, is and linked to the character is ethics and history. And I'm sure we're going to talk about reputation risk and again, and third-party management. I say again because I talked about reputation at Connect at the time of the conference a few weeks ago. And so anyway, so we have the risk tiering, the decision, the risk tiering. And then once you decide which company you're going to do business with and hire, you have another element, which is the contract drafting, and the contract management. And I know I'm speaking largely to an American audience, so I don't have to emphasize the importance of contracts. It's very much in the American culture. I come from a lawyer's family. I take contracts very seriously. I do read the contracts I sign. I know I'm not, it's not necessarily the case of everybody, but anyway. But one thing though, that is not always taken into account, and I have a chance to go back to that, is the incentive embedded in the contract, is also the fact that you need to sign a contract after you've solved a number of issues. And I've put it in bold here, a periodic contract review. And actually, I had a discussion even earlier today with a firm that had a disruption at with their third party, who basically abandoned them because the contract finished too short. And so you both have a contract that can be long and gain some perennity and some stabilization in the relationship, but you also want to be able to review and amend some part of the contract at regular intervals from both parties. That's part of the best practice when both the buyer and the seller not express their grievance, but explain what works well, what doesn't work well, both in terms of payment incentives, performance, SLAs, you name it, in order to keep a relationship that works for both parties, which is, as we know, a key to success, is when both parties feel that they are treated fairly. And so, and if there are issues, really establish a remediation process with a timeline to fix these deficiencies with roles and responsibilities added to it or attached to it. Okay. So you've done all this, and the life of the contract starts, the life of the collaboration starts, and then you're in the monitoring part. A lot of the success stories are around continuous monitoring and evaluate often and correct quickly and praise often, which is also a motto in education, actually, correct quickly and praise often. So you want to, if there's a problem with performance, raise it quickly it could be on both sides again, so that it can be remediated, and you can link that to time to detection. I also recently, again, given a course on key risk indicators. One of my favorite key risk indicator is time to detection. How quickly do you have the capacity to detect an incident or a deficiency in your organization? Because just like a fire, just like a disease, or just like a pandemic, the quickly you detect it, the quickly you can act on it and reduce the incidence. So the more you have a continuous monitoring and a continuous dialogue with your third party, the quickly you can jump on issues and correct issues if need be. So the audit rights, especially for important vendors, very important that you establish the capacity to have audit rights, especially for, obviously not necessarily for everything, but on a need-to-know basis, both for the risk assessment of the vendor, but also for the monitoring. Now, vendor monitoring, I mentioned KRIs, is part of a general risk assessment. General risk assessments need to be continuous, but one of the features of the continuity is to be able to identify the trigger events, the events that would attract attention and trigger a reevaluation of whether or not this is a collaboration you want to pursue, or is it something that needs to be changed. And here you have the list. Obviously, if there's an incident or a severe incident like a data breach, how do you do the root cause analysis? Where are the responsibilities of both sides? And how do we take from there? M&A is a classic trigger. So if your vendor change ownership, it triggers a reevaluation in most of the contract. And of course, if you change in the nature of service providers, or if you have act of gods or other breaches of other changes in performance. This is also good to put in, well, more than good, strongly advisable to put also in the contract. In case of this and this and this event, we're going to reevaluate the collaboration. Okay. I'm watching the time, but I think we're still good. And just finishing on the cycle, standards of termination. Classically, when you're at the end of the service provider or at the end of the term, you have a clear wind-on procedure. You couldn't have abrupt termination in case of an event, but hopefully not. Again, I highlighted the point that is close to my heart because I've seen so many firms struggling because the transition is done properly, or sometimes simply forgotten, is the IP transmission and the know-how transfer. And this is, an important decision as well, going back to my first step of the business model and the risk appetite decision to outsource. All the activities that are done by third parties are activities for which where the know-how and the skills are not developed in-house. And so how much of that do you want to keep outside of your organization? And if one day you need to insource, you really want to have at least some part of this know-how and this skill in-house, so you don't constantly depend on external parties, external third-party providers, especially if one day you decide to bring back this activity in-house to the firms. Another element, especially if you have a low risk appetite on then transfer, is the certificate of destruction of data. It's funny to see how in every contract I've seen in third party, including in my own experience, and of course I'm a third party provider, there's always or very often this clause of you need to destroy the data. I don't remember many firms, let me say it like that. I don't remember many firms asking me if I actually had deleted the data. So, there's a lot of things, but apart from my own experience, there's a lot of things that people put in contracts and don't follow up on. So either it's important and you follow up on it, or it's not, and there's no point putting it in the contract. And so just to finish on the types of termination, like I said, the vast majority of the case is the end of service. Hopefully only in a minority of the case you have external circumstances, or you can have a change of heart or a change of regulation, so convenience or regulatory. But in most cases, hopefully it's the normal end of service. Before we move to the common traps and points of attention, I'm sure you have questions, Scott.
Yeah, maybe one or two. I'll try not to take more than the usual amount of time asking, but I am curious. So we've moved through these steps here. I'm curious about some of your experience in this matter. We've moved through steps, vendor assessment and classification, contract negotiation, remediation, and so forth. And I'm curious, in your professional experience, if you could pick one of these areas to draw people's attention to say, more often than not, this is where companies are really screwing up, and this is what you need to focus on. This is the area of most efficiency, in my experience, and something that everybody should take another look at right away. Which area would you think that might be, and why?
Okay. I would pick two, but
Okay.
you know what?
Because of course.
Let me pick one now.
Okay.
Because the second one will come.
We'll
I
come
can
to it.
slide
Sure.
it in section two, so I'll have my two answer. For the one, I would say, and again, it may not be the more critical one from a downside, but I think it's the most critical one from an upside, and I'll explain. It's really building a partnership with your critical vendors. It's really taking the companies I have in mind, and one of them is a large credit card company, both active in the US and the UK, and I spend a lot of time training them in the UK, not on third parties, but on operational risk and ERM in general. So I know them relatively well. And they really they're very, very dependent, being a credit card company, they're very, very dependent on a number of third-party providers, whether it's payment and IT and call center, because it's a very heavy retail business. And they work in very close, tight-knit relationship with their critical vendors, to up to the point that the vendors, and I have other examples in mind of similar collaborations where the vendor is almost an extension of the firm. Of course, these are different corporations with different balance sheets and responsibility, but they work very tightly together. And one example of that is that they are swaps, not staff swaps, but definitely staff visits. So the staff in the UK go and sit in India, and call centers in Bangalore at the time, go sit in the call center and live at the place of the vendor for 3 months, 6 months, and vice versa. So you have a collaboration that is including in the place of working. Other collaborations of partnerships are where there's an issue. It's not me versus them, but these are root cause analysis when the origins of the errors and the causes and the remediation of the errors are really seen as a shared responsibility. You know, and some of you listening know that I work with UN agencies a lot, and UN agencies, as you probably know, and if you don't, I'll tell you, use an immense amount of third parties. There's third-party providers left, right, and center of all sorts of quality and size and vetting, etc. It's a huge part of their risk. But they have this idea now they've developed over the last few years of risk sharing. So it's not only the risk of the third party or our risks, is really a joint risk sharing of this collaboration. And I think this view of let's do things and let's manage our risk as collaboratively as possible is really powerful in order to have a sane and well-intended relationship.
That's a very good point. Now, obviously, that dynamic is different. You mentioned the power balance of vendor versus employer, right? And that sometimes that can really work, and sometimes there's a monopolistic interest or something like that, where that you might not be able to have that kind of positive relationship. Hence all of the diligence that we're doing here.
Yes, no, absolutely, and it goes both ways. So you're right. Then the examples I gave are examples, especially for the credit card company. It's a big company outsourcing with other big companies. So you almost
Yep.
have a marriage of equals, if you want,
Right.
a collaboration of
Right.
equals.
There's parity there.
You can have very large companies outsourcing to small vendors, and you have to obey with what they do. And of course, especially if you work with governmental agencies, I'm laughing because I had a very administrative email hitting my inbox, and no, you have to do this and this and this, and if not, it's not possible. And you're like, yeah, or I don't do it. But so the flexibility of terms is different depending on the sector. But again, you don't always have the big buyer and the small seller. You can very much also have the small buyer and the big seller. When you're
Sure.
a small company and your provider is AWS, Amazon Web Services, or Google, you're going to do exactly what they say, and you're going to take exactly the information they give you, because if they don't have your business, you know what? It's fine. And vice versa. And so in the bargaining power, it's the old school is, and it's still in the mind of some, and you heard me saying that at the conference as well. You still have them in the mind of certain buyer. I can do whatever I want. My seller will rush to provide services to me. This world has changed.
Yes.
It's not the case in a lot of instances, let's say.
That's true. And me coming from marketing, let's just say that there's no shortage of enormous vendors where you say, I can't wait for the day when I no longer have to work with you again, but it's not this day. And so, yes, I'm going to take what you give me and do exactly what you tell me. Let's go ahead and go to section 2 and continue on with our conversation.
Okay, thank you. And that will answer some of the questions we started touching upon. So things to look at: bargaining powers. We started mentioning that. I'll give you a bit more detail. Governance and accountability. So who does what, and is there a potential to fall into the cracks? Mutual expectations. I haven't mentioned that yet, but this is one of the very important success factor of third-party relationship. Complexity of not only third party, that's the easy bit, and then you have the fourth party and the fifth party, and how do you extend your risk management and your assessment to this web of connection? That's not easy. Contract design and incentives, I touched upon it, but I want to say a bit more. Procurement department is a nest for operational risk. I've said that. I've said that in other instances. I'm going to say that again. If you have to start your operational risk assessment and to look at incidents and to sort of audit in your firms, and I say that to many operational risk managers listening, look at your procurement department, guys. You won't be disappointed, or you will be crying, one of the two. And then finally, the continuity and substitutability. And that's also a little bit what you mentioned. Sometimes you're serviced by a giant, and that's him or nothing. And so that's a risk you have to accept or in-source if you can. Not always possible. Okay, so balance of bargaining power. We mentioned that not all suppliers are smaller than their client. Some suppliers have large bargaining power because of their size or their monopoly power, and so they dictate their conditions. But apart from that, besides the Amazon and Google of this world, there has been over the last few years, and more than few years really, a pushback from a lot of service providers who got grown tired of answering 200 questions to 25 different clients, which are all, slightly a little bit different, but basically want to know the same thing. And so you had the development of the SIGs, the Standard Information Gathering Questionnaires. Shared assessment is one of the leaders when it comes to that. And so look at their website if you're not familiar with it, but you have a lot of templates and material. For those of you who are keen to know the general guidance, or if some of you listening are third-party risk managers and you want some general benchmark, ISO is always a good place to start. So the international standard organization have the 37,500 norms, which is the guidance of outsourcing. So just the opportunity for me to point you at some external resources if you're not familiar with them. Governance, like always in governance, you want clarity on the roles and responsibilities and accountabilities of different parties in the firms when it comes to risk management. The answer is also, like always in risk management, it depends. The more common problem is it's often unclear. So the it depends, sometimes it's the responsibility of the business to be in charge of the outsourcing. So IT deals with IT providers, and I don't know, sugar suppliers deal with the sugar suppliers, whatever you mean, ops deal with, etc., etc. I mean, IT is, of course, one of the center point of outsourcing, but not only. And then what is the procurement department? Well, sometimes the procurement department is there to collate the contract, sometimes to negotiate the price, sometimes to evaluate. Risk evaluation, though, involves a lot in good practice, involves a lot of third parties. I have several examples in the financial services where there's up to 14 different departments or subject matter experts that are involved in assessing the risk of outsourcing or the risk of third parties, because you have legal elements, compliance element, data security, communication, marketing, ops, etc. So it's a joint responsibility. But because a lot of people are involved and there's a lot of joint players, let's say, you have the risk of, oh, I thought you were in charge. No, I thought you were. And recently I was doing a risk assessment of not only of third parties, but of a number of risk and RCSAs in a public organizations. And that's one of the things they highlighted. They're not, for a number of risks, they're not exactly sure of what the business is responsible for and the support function is. So who is in charge if there's a problem? Who is in charge if you need to replace the vendor in a hurry, for instance, or if the contract doesn't work as expected. So another point of attention here. Probably easier than the roles and responsibility, and I completely understand that the governance aspect is easier said than done, are the mutual expectations. And of course, there's always the say of, under promise, over deliver, which is a motto of consultants. Yes or no? I don't want to bash McKinsey too much. That would be very arrogant of me. But the problem is you want to be as clear as possible. And it's the discussions I had with a lot of consultants and a lot of firms also hiring third parties, having a clear descriptions of what do you expect, what are the goods and services, what are the schedules, realistic SLAs, so not very much sandbagged. Again, that's my observation, and I have an extreme example. I won't mention the name, but there's a payment infrastructure company, and there's several, but let's think a big one, who takes disruptions of payment system pretty seriously, like they all do, and it's quite normal. So much so that after 10 minutes of disruption, the board is involved. So it's crisis management up to the board for 10 minutes disruption. Their SLA, or at least at the time I was advising them and we were talking about them, I wasn't advising them on the SLA, shall I say. Their SLAs, sorry, were 4 hours. 4 hours. Okay, they triggered the board after 10 minutes, but to their client, they say, we can be disrupted until 4 hours. Now, of course, there is some sort of buffer capacity that you put in your SLAs, but I think that's an extreme. And I think being realistic of what's a good performance, it's fine, because otherwise you have what's very common is that you have firms who have key risk indicators on the performance and of their third parties as a breach of SLA. But you never breach the SLA because it's sandbagged like crazy. So that's just an example. But quality standards, grievance process, compensation in case of bad performance, all that is important. Now, there's the point number 4 here I skipped because I want to spend a bit more time on it. It's the incentive structure in the payment system, in the payment terms. And by that, I mean, the way you compensate and the way you evaluate your third party will drive, to some extent, will drive behaviors. And that's human nature. People optimize their revenues. And I had 2 or 3 examples of firms. I'm trying to walk on eggshell because I don't want any names to be recognized here, but that were involved in an AML remediation. So they needed to review anti-money laundering remediation due to the regulator, and they needed to review all the contracts. And so it's quite a lot of volumes of work with a number of contracts. But a number of them made the mistakes of paying the firms that they delegated to review this contract, not by the contract review. So it's all relationship with the client. So basically you go through every file and you redo all the due diligence and the check of all the clients. But instead of paying per file, they paid per day. And they ended up after 9, you see where it goes, right? They
Yeah.
ended up after 9 months with 3 files reviewed. Not that bad, but you see what I mean. That's the
I
case
get
of
you.
the plumber that takes 3 hours to fix your tap, because you pay him by the hour instead of by the tap being fixed. You
Yep.
pay him by the results, it takes 10 minutes. You pay him by the hour, it takes 3 hours. And
In the
so,
States, we have no shortage of that kind of dynamic. Yes, that's true.
and so, and so this is particularly important because it can drive large, and I have cases where these funds has been terminated, but the AML, actually one of them, I knew the management are like, careful how you pay your third party, and was telling this example I knew, and it was like too late. So basically, we didn't think about that when you contracted. I'm like, that's the time to rewrite your contract. And I'll give you another example. I had a firm that was a few years ago who moved to a massive third-party business model, so outsource massively and just keep the core. And they were asking me how to review their framework, and they say, well, we control, but we cannot do more after we minimize the risk of losing 50 euros. And I was like, 50 euros? I mean, hang on, relax a little bit, that's fine. Not that I want to be arrogant or
Out
anything.
50 euros, but yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay. It's not worth probably the cost of the control you put in place, but I said, you move to a third-party business model. So what's really important is how you select your third party, how you incentivize them, what is the contract design, and so that's a key risk on your key risk register. And they said, too late. And so they haven't thought about the design. Now, not all these practices that poor, but I had enough example to say this is really important. And I asked the question to many firms since then. That was years ago. And often I have the answer like, no, we don't really think about it. They look at contract for a legal perspective and for contract enforceability, but design, because again, and that's linked to these governance, design, it sort of falls into the crack because legal looks at the legal aspects, IT looks or someone else look at which service they want, and no one sort of really looks at incentives and behaviors. Okay, so basically that's also the qualitative aspect.
Yes.
Fourth party management, so that's obviously an added complexity. Regulations require, at least in the financial services industry, that your third party risk management extend to your fourth party. It's not mandatory to extend to your fifth party because of the 6 rules of separation. You can have the whole world, or it's an increased complexity. And that also requires more and more. I can't imagine doing that manually. You need good software. And honestly, I say that without knowing much about what Riskonnect offers for third-party risk assessment. So I leave that to the marketing team. It just occurs to me now. We're like, oh, hang on, you are a software company, so
You're fine. We
that was
have
cool.
third-party management as well. So yes, you're absolutely
Very good.
fine.
That was completely genuine. For a second, I knew I was talking to you, Scott, and for a second, I forgot I was working and talking for a vendor management. So yes, I do genuinely believe that it's impossible to manually not only look after your third parties and certainly after your fourth party, the complexity that is in the supply chain and all the points of disruption it can create, especially in a regulatory environment. And to a large extent, the replication of the rule is a good rule. Replication of the rule is you apply to your third parties the rule you apply to yourself, and you apply to your fourth parties the rule you apply to your third parties. And this is interesting in a sense because I also know a number of firms who very honestly admitted that they hold their third parties in higher standard than themselves. So basically, they're more demanding on their third parties than
Interesting.
they are on themselves. So you have to do, they say to your third party, you have to do this and this and this and that. But actually, they recognize that they acknowledge that they're not doing that themselves. So the same rules cuts both ways. If you slack for your risk management, you might be a bit relaxed on your third party. That suffers exception, of course.
That's fabulous. It's nice to know that the messaging around third and fourth party risk management is sinking in. Right now, it's actually probably over sinking in, and now we have to we have to remember to self-reflect too, and make sure
Yes.
that we're holding ourselves to the same standards.
Yes, and look, that's the classic of what is the risk management inside of the financial services regulator, Are they applying themselves the same risk management as they apply to their bank? Not
I had
always
never
would
even,
be.
I haven't even thought about that. I haven't even thought about the risk management inside the regulators. Nobody ever thinks about that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I can't tell you much, but yeah.
Don't say another
No,
word.
no, I'm
Everybody
not
on
gonna
this
say who
call
I work
gets
with.
it. Everybody gets it.
Um,
We're looking at about 10 minutes left, just so you
okay,
know.
okay. I think we are reaching the end of the second session. So section, and the third one is very short. So just on the contract design, you have one more slide here, but make sure that you insert your incentives in the contract designs, and common operational risk linked to outsourcing. That's the nest of the procurement department. Typical example of unreconciled invoices with services. A classic example is the firms that pay 1.5 million, one I've lived through, 1.5 million to a third party for goods and services they haven't received, because the clerk who signed off on the invoice didn't realize they had to check the deliveries of goods and services. So make sure that your validation process is in line, matches with the contract, matches with the services. Errors in investment, invoicing. Another classic example, of course, you're going to say I'm conflicted, but it's excessive price bargaining. If you pressure your third parties on price too much, they're going to send you the B team, or they're going to cut corner. And discussion also I have sometimes: never try to save money on your doctors or your lawyers. That can end up very, very badly. The same way, try not to save money with your third party in charge of your cybersecurity, because that may not be a good idea. So this is very important in terms of risk assessment description. So basically, a lot of the things here that we talked about links to the risk appetite, and where are the risks that you have in your third party risk management. Are you aware of them, and are you sure you're doing everything you could or you should to put them in line with your risk appetite? But I'm happy to have your.
Let's go straight on to you. You have a couple of thoughts on TPRM and risk appetite. Let's go
Okay.
straight on.
Okay. Sorry, I spoke too much again.
No, you're fine.
Um, just as okay, let's take that as a summary in terms of the pros and cons and the risk mitigation and the risk elevations on third party. I don't want you to believe, or I don't want the audience to think that third party or outsourcing always is synonymous with elevated risk. You can decrease your risk by outsourcing, and that's a little bit the human bias. You always think that things are safer with you, but actually there's a lot of instances when your data are safe with other large cloud providers, or the effectiveness of your processes are more secure by specialist providers. So think about quality of service, think about productivity, think of competitive advantage and comparative advantage. And so again, don't try to save money on your third party. I think it's a very bad calculus, both in terms of quality and risk, and the two are linked. Customer interface, personally, it's something I would not delegate, but some would. But that, I think you need to have a very strong discussions about who you outsource and who you trust to talk to your client. Pay attention to IP retention, transfer, autonomy, and how much you can still function if you decide later on to outsource. And that goes also with the skill retentions and the upskilling of your staff. Data protection is so high in the minds of third-party risk manager that I don't need to emphasize that. Continuity of service, I think, is continuity and quality of service would be personally my biggest worry. And like I said, TPRM is like most a two-sided risk, so it can go up and it can go down. And so, Scott, I know you like takeaways at the end of
I
presentations.
love takeaways at the end of presentations. Even more importantly, everybody listening likes takeaways at the end of presentations. So let's lay them on.
So there you go. Think before you outsource or you rush to outsource, think about your business model and what are your comparative advantage compared to the advantage of the service providers. Have a proportionate approach. Don't treat every third party the same way. I still have examples, actually, it's in the university world where the requirement of vetting and documentation to pay suppliers were not proportionate, and that creates enormous inefficiency. Proportionate risk management is relevant. Trust but verify. It's not a policing, but ask for evidence as much as possible. And it's true for every element of monitoring and supervision in risk management and beyond. Contract design, incentive design, very important, largely overlooked. I think I've insisted on that. Continuous monitoring, praise often and correct quickly. So be able to notice quickly when things derail, and KRIs are good for that. Extend to fourth party when you can, and because you have Riskonnect. No, I don't know, I invent, but surely you can. Extend to fifth party, because actually you quickly add a fifth party. I've been fifth parties at very large bank, and I was like, you can't do anything to me. Good, I'm honest, and they were a bit white, a bit pale of fear. And then like, oof. So you quickly add a third party, especially when you're in trainings and stuff like that, because you have intermediaries on intermediaries. Data sensitivity, availability of service. The regulators will watch your risk management to these elements. Reporting and communication, not only within the firm, but build a partnership with vendors. And of course, try to terminate contract in the best way possible, because you never know who you're going to meet in the future. And of course, beware of your substitutability or the dependency, and try to diversify your supply chain as much as you can. Time flies.
Time flies. This has really gone fast, Ariane. This has been wonderful, wonderful information, and that's going to take us to time, really. So it just remains for me to thank you very much for joining us again, to thank everybody listening for joining us, giving up an hour out of your day to spend some time with us and get some wisdom. And we will see you back here for the next installment of Risk at Work. Take care.